What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. Email us, PackersTotalAccess@gmail.com. You can text us 865-658-5824. Also, if you want to join our Patreon community, if you will, we've got a page set up for that. You can find the link in the description of this video. You can go to patreon.com/PackerFan Total Access. We got an awesome community in there and appreciate everybody supporting the show over in that group. I know we got several people filing in already. Jacob may be on here in a second. We'll see. I know Tim's out of town handling some business. So, and I know Emilio's probably date mocking it up. So we may be flying solo. We'll see if Jacob has time to hop on in here. I know we got a bunch of people in the chat. We got Eric Sutherland in the house. Getting us started off right, really. Eric said, thoughts and prayers to the family and friends of Jaire Jackson. Rip, young man, so sad. So obviously, if you guys have not heard, defensive back Jaire Jackson for the Minnesota Vikings. I believe he was just 24 years old, I think. I know he was drafted, I think it was last year. Obviously, tragically passed away in what I believe they said was a vehicle accident, an automobile accident. So thoughts and prayers to them, man. If he was 24 years old, I think that's the age I heard. My goodness, man. Just absolutely devastating for a parent, obviously. I know we got many parents that listen to the show and watch this show, and again, could not fathom what his family's going through right now. So obviously, our prayers go out to the Jackson family for sure. Let's see, we got Greg in the chat says, "Good evening. Yes, so sad when someone so young and on the verge of starting his career has that all taken away in the blink of an eye." Very well said, Greg. And again, man, it's just an absolute tragedy. It really is. Let's see who else we got in the chat. We got United Bates in the house. We got Josh Vallanningham. Let's see. We've got Greg in the house. We got Chris Nichols. Good to see you, buddy. A bunch of people filing in. So appreciate y'all making us a part of your evening here on this July 6th on what I believe is a Saturday evening. So don't expect a huge crowd, but it's cool that y'all are already in here ready to talk ball. Before we dive into some of the topics, let's do this. Let's go ahead and give a quick shout out to our sponsors tonight. And that's the good folks over at Ticket King, the official ticket provider of Packer Fan Total Access Live. Wisconsin-based since 1992, Ticket King specializes in Packers tickets. They are Wisconsin's largest ticket source with offices next to Lambeau Field and in Milwaukee. Just click on the link in the video description here that'll send you to theticketking.com where you can register for free as a customer and go ahead and start shopping for your Packers tickets. Again, make sure you shop local. Check with Ticket King before going to some of the big-name companies. You can check them out at their office across from Lambeau or in Milwaukee. Or like I said, check out theticketking.com where you can do everything from the convenience of your home, like my wife likes to shop with everything. So, again, Ticket King, the official ticket provider of Packer Fan Total Access. We appreciate them sponsoring the show. So we're just going to kind of pick up where we left off earlier this morning. We were going through these articles where PFF essentially picked the top 32 at each position. And I really like the way they did this. Now, whether you agree with the rankings or not, that's totally up to you. Obviously, there's some that I've disagreed with, but I just love hearing other people's opinions. And it seems like every position was written by a different person over at PFF. Like this one, for instance, we're going to get into is defensive tackle this evening. And it was written by Sam Monson. Okay. And this was back on May 30th, but they just compiled all this information together. So you would have an idea of, okay, who do some of the folks at PFF think are the top 32 at each position. And we're going to talk about salary cap hits, where they rank across the league, all that good stuff. All right. So let's just go right down the list here for defensive tackle. Again, it says PFF interior defensive rankings, top 32 ahead of the 2024 NFL season. So number one, you've got Chris Jones of the Kansas City Chiefs. Many people look at the Chiefs and they think it's all Patrick Mahomes and it's all Travis Kelce. But the reality is, without that defense last year, they do not win the Super Bowl. You know, we were kind of talking about where Pat Mahomes' statistics kind of laid last year. And obviously when you lose Tyreek Hill to the Miami Dolphins, it makes a huge difference. Take a big hit on production. But also you've got to give credit where credit's due. When Pat Mahomes needs to make a play, he seems to make a play, right? But that defense is really, really, really underrated, man, especially with Chris Jones there in the middle. He not only is he a guy that's going to play defensive tackle, but he can also kick out and play a 9-tech. He can play a 7. He can play a 5. He can play your 3. He can play 1. All over the defensive line, you could just kind of pick a mismatch and go, okay, you know what, Chris? Go beat up that dude today. And that's really what the Kansas City Chiefs like to do with Chris Jones. So he comes in number one. Can't argue with that. Number two, Dexter Lawrence of the Giants. Number three, Quinnen Williams of the Jets, just an absolute stud. Quinnen Williams is one of my favorite defensive tackles in the game. He just plays the game the right way. Derek Brown is number four for the Panthers. Number five is Cameron Hayward for the Steelers. Number six is DeForest Buckner for the Colts. Number seven is Javon Hargrave from the 49ers. Number 8 is Jeffrey Simmons from the Titans. Number 9 is Jalen Carter from the Eagles. Number 10 is Christian Wilkins from the Raiders. You've got number 11, Justin Matabuke from the Baltimore Ravens. I think he just got a big contract this year. Number 12, you got Christian Barmore for the New England Patriots. I think they just signed him to a long-term deal, if I remember correctly. Number 13, DJ Reader for the Lions. 14, Jonathan Allen for the Commanders. 15, Alim McNeil, I would imagine, for the Detroit Lions. They're just so well built up front, both on offense and defense. They being the Detroit Lions, just absolute stud lineup they've got. Number 16, you've got Kobe Turner from the Los Angeles Rams. 17, you've got Leonard Williams from the Seattle Seahawks. 18, David Onyemata from the Falcons. 19, Eric Armstead from the Jaguars. Number 20, you got Zach Seiler from the Miami Dolphins. Number 21, you got Vita Vea from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Number 22, Ed Oliver from the Bills. 23, Odazuwa for the Dallas Cowboys. Number 24, Daquan Jones for the Bills. Number 25, you got Byron Murphy, the second from the Seahawks, obviously a rookie coming in this year. Seahawks did really good with the draft, man. Getting Byron Murphy as late as they did in the draft was just an absolute. I mean, it fell right into their lap. They got a true 3-tech that can disrupt, at least at the college level. We'll see if we can at the pros. 26, you got Dalvin Tomlinson from the Browns. And then number 27, you got our very own Kenny Clark. And many people are going, whoa, that's really, really low. I have to disagree, man. And if you've listened to us over the course of the last 12 months, and really it began last offseason, Ryan kind of brung it to my attention. You know, you just always go, Kenny Clark's a dog, Kenny Clark's a dog. And Ryan brung it up on his spot. Like, you know, he had one really, really good year. And after that, I wouldn't say he's been just good, but he's definitely not been elite. He's definitely not been great. You know, when you look at the PFF grade, that's what it suggests. When you look at the missed tackle percentage, that's what it suggests. Now, I think he finished with 10 sacks, which is great for an interior defensive lineman, but the rest of the game really struggled. Here's what the write-up says from Sam Monson on Kenny Clark. It says, at one point, Clark was the league's prototype for the modern one-gapping nose tackle. He has seasons on his resume with elite production and PFF grades above 90.0 overall, but his more recent body of work has been good rather than great. Exactly what we just said, right? Last season, he tallied 66 quarterback pressures and 25 defensive stops, including the playoffs, and he played an impressive 913 snaps. So just right off the top, what you want to say about Kenny Clark, that dude is available and he's accountable, right? The two most important abilities in the National Football League. Now, is he worth what you're paying him? That's the big question, right? And I had asked this question a couple of times to different podcasters, and one in particular that will remain nameless responded with, you pay Kenny whatever he wants. I'm like, well, that's a hell of a way to put together a team just because you like the guy. Now, maybe he goes on their pod. I don't know. Maybe that's why they've got so much love for him. I know this as a person, Kenny Clark, man, you're not going to find a better dude. You talk about overcoming adversity and making it to the level he did, and it's such a young age, and he's still got some tread left on the tires. There's no doubt about that. It's just, you know, the thing that hurts Kenny Clark is, like I said, the missed tackle, broken tackle percentage, obviously, and it's huge in your run game. It really is, especially when you're playing two gap. When you're playing two gap and you're missing tackles, that's a rough look. Now, when you go to one gap and you're getting way in the backfield, 5 yards deep in the backfield, and you miss a tackle, you've disrupted the play. You've kind of done your job, right? But at the same time, man, you got to when you're talking about the money that he's getting paid, and we'll dive into that right now, but I just want to kind of glance through and see what the chat was saying. Like Chris Nichols here says, total disrespect to Kenny Skylark Clark. I love that name, Chris. It's money. So Chris disagrees with me, it sounds like. Hey, man, respect, bro. You know, like we can all agree to disagree. if you think he's too far down the list, hey, who am I to say I'm right and you're wrong? It's just based off of what I've kind of looked at, what I've seen. I would have to disagree respectfully, of course. 27 to me, probably about where he needs to be. I know you guys are getting tired of hearing me say that. It's just in my eyes, anyways. I think that's where he needs to be. Eric Sutherland says, I'm surprised Clark made the list. I wouldn't have been surprised if he didn't make the list, Eric. But at the same time, I do feel like he deserved to make the list, if that makes sense. Let's see here. Coach Lynn says Jackson was drafted this year. Thought he'd be a Packers target. So sad. So he was actually in the draft this year. The drafts run together for me. Once they're over and they're not a Packer, I just kind of move on. Let me glance at my board real quick. So Kyrie Jackson was actually in the draft this year. That's wild. Give me just a second. Sorry for the dead air here. That's what happens when you're flying solo. This is usually when I tell the guys to say something smart. I'm not showing him on my board here, but I definitely trust your oh, there he is. Yeah, Kyrie Jackson. Okay, yeah. So I had him at a 154.8. So yeah, he was right below Kalen King, believe it or not. Like he was the next corner below Kalen King, which you guys know I had Kalen King a lot higher than most people did. So wow. I was thinking he got drafted last year, so he was actually going to be a rookie this year. Man, you work your ass off your entire life and get to the top, and then have something tragic like that happen. It's just devastating for sure, man. Back to Kenny Clark. Eric Sutherland said he's a great guy and awesome in the locker room, but overpaid for me. I would agree with that. And then Chris Nichols said I would think he'd be somewhere around 15. If they did put him at 15, I would think it's a little high, but I wouldn't be like, whoa, that's way too high, right? But I'm going to run some numbers for you guys here. And so people don't think I'm just hating on Kenny Clark. And again, this was brought to my attention a year and a half ago by Ryan Schlip when he was kind of pointing it out on his pod. And I'm like, Kenny's better than that. And then I started looking at the numbers. I'm going, I don't know. But let's pull up the contract real quick. First of all, well, yeah, let me read the statistics, okay? So I pulled some important statistics, analytics, however you want to, metrics, whatever you want to call them. So you guys know I'm very big on pressure percentage, right? Like yes, I want sacks. Everybody wants sacks, but to me, Kenny having 10 sacks, and let's say that led defensive tackles in sacks, but him finishing with a lower ranking in pressure percentage, I would much rather have a higher pressure percentage and a few less sacks, because to me, that means you're disrupting more plays on the field, right? Rather than just getting that big flashy, hey, I brung the quarterback down. Now you strip sack and you force fumbles. That's a totally different ballgame, right? Like that's the golden goose there, if you will. But here are some of Kenny's numbers that I think are important. Okay, pressure percentage, he was 27th amongst defensive tackles in pressure percentage. Sacks combined, which is total and assist sacks, he was 10th in that. So that's great. He's top 10 in sacks, right, amongst defensive tackles. So 27th in pressure percentage, 10th in sacks. Broken/missed tackle percentage, he was at 10.2%. Guys, that puts him at 141. He was the 141st ranked defensive tackle in the league when it comes to broken/missed tackle percentage. That's not bad. That is absolutely horrible. I mean, most defenses are playing with two defensive tackles on the field, anywhere from 75 to 85% of the time being in a nickel, and them going to just kind of two edge rushers, two interior defensive linemen. So if he's one of only two guys for the Packers on the field, and you got 32 teams, you do the math there, right? If you say, okay, there's 32 teams, you times that by 2, that's 64, okay? So you've got 64 defensive tackles that any analytic, any statistic you look at is going to show you, okay, they're in the top 64, therefore they are starting quality at that position, in my opinion. It doesn't mean, everyone's got to agree with this, but if that puts them at starting caliber by being in the top 64, because there's only two defensive tackles on the field the majority of the time, and you finish 141st, what that says is when it comes to broken tackles, missed tackle percentage, Kenny Clark was a fifth stringer. And I'm not trying to dog him, but it's like, whoa, that's rough. The sacks look great. 10th, that's awesome. Now, when you go to PFF grade, which you guys know, some people, you either love PFF or you hate it, it seems like. I like it because they do a hell of a lot of legwork for us fans where we don't have to go out and dive into every single snap, grade it out. You can do that if you want, and some people do that. But for me, the most part, what I like about PFF is it's just a quick glance. Okay, here's where they've got them. All right, where's the SIS data got them in total points? Okay, where's pressure percentage? Where's sack combined? Where's broken / missed tackle percentage? All those things. PFF, he had a 70.4. So he graded out as the 35th highest graded defensive tackle in the league. Right? I mean, and some are going, okay, that's not horrible. I agree, it's not horrible, but for what you're paying him, and we'll get to that in a second. If you take pressure percentage, sacks combined, broken / missed tackle percentage, and PFF grade, and you took all four of those and you averaged it up, he came out to be the 53rd ranked defensive tackle in the league. So that would suggest he is a solid number 2 defensive tackle, which, hey, nothing wrong with having a solid number 2 on your team. Here's the problem. Look at the cap hit amongst defensive tackles for 2024 this year right now. Kenny Clark is eating up the most salary cap at the defensive tackle position of any other player in the entire league. Aaron Donald obviously retired. He's got a post-June 1 designation of 24.9. Let's just wipe that off the board. The next highest paid guy is Cameron Hayward for the Pittsburgh Steelers at $22.4 million. So he is $5 million against the cap cheaper than Kenny Clark. Now, you got to ask yourself, would you take Cam Hayward over Kenny Clark? On the surface, without looking at the same numbers I looked with Kenny, I would probably say yes. I have a hard time believing that of those 4 key metrics, those 4 key statistics rankings, if you will, I have a hard time believing he would rank below 53rd. So it just shows you the Pittsburgh Steelers saving quite a bit of money there compared to, what we're paying Kenny Clark this year as far as cap hit. All right. Next, you got Jeffrey Simmons, 21.6. Then you got Daron Payne at 21.6. Then you got Jonathan Allen, 21.4. Vita Vea, 20.9. This one hurts my soul. Quinnen Williams, New York Jets defensive tackle, who I personally believe is top 3 defensive tackle in the game. He's only getting paid $20.4 million. So we're paying Kenny Clark against the cap hit wise in 2024. He's eating up $7 million more than Quinnen Williams with the Jets. And I know we like to make fun of Joe Douglas and the whole Jets organization because they always seem to screw everything up. The one thing they have not screwed up is that defense. And one of, if not the main reasons, the most important reasons that defense is so good is because you got Quinnen Williams playing on the inside. Now, he predominantly, he'll play anywhere from a little shade to a 1, to a 3, to a 5. It's rare you see him out there in like a wide approach, and I'm sure they have done it because he does have a little bit of versatility. But for the most part, they're lining him up inside the guards and just say, go wreck the game plan, right? And he's getting paid again $20.4 million in cap hit this year. Grady Jarrett, 20.3. Dexter Lawrence, 14.5. And we'll just kind of end it there. But I just wanted to point that out. Kenny Clark has the highest cap hit at the defensive tackle position in the entire National Football League for the 2024 season. He was 27th in pressure percentage, 10th in sacks, 141st in missed tackle percentage, and he was 35th according to PFF, averaging out to be the 53rd best defensive tackle in the league. I'm going to try to glance through here and just want to see what the chat thinks about that. Because it's like, oh man, I want him on the team, but for the right price. That goes for everybody, right? I mean, who doesn't want good football players for the right price? And I'm not saying dirt cheap. I'm just saying, whoo, man, that's pretty rough, right? So Eric Sutherland says that's piss poor for sure. Let's see here. Mr. Goat, Brooks, Wyatt, Slayton are going to be disruptive as a baseline in this new scheme, making Clark disposable. See, that's really what we're getting to. Right, Goat? Mr. Goat. That's Mr. Goat to you. That's what we're getting to is like, look at what you've got behind him and what they're doing in Devontae Wyatt, who, if I remember correctly, he didn't have as many sacks, obviously, but he had a higher pressure percentage. Now, his broken / missed tackle percentage is pretty bad too, but I don't think it was as bad as Kenny's. and his PFF grade, I want to think, was higher than Kenny, I believe, but I could be wrong. It might have been a little lower. We'd have to dive in it. I wasn't prepared for that. But Mr. Goat said he's no Cletius Hunt. But yeah, I think you make a good point there, Goat, when he says Brooks, Wyatt, Slayton are going to be as disruptive as a baseline in the new scheme, making Clark disposable. I think they want him back, but I think they're going to, and they're in contract negotiations right now, if I'm understanding correctly. So if you get him for the right price, great, right? It's just what is the right price. And listen, if Kenny hits the market, he's probably going to get top 5 defensive tackle money, which shows you how he's valued across the league. The problem is, like, how many times are we going to do this and eat up this much cap and not kind of get that return on the investment, if you will, right? So let's see what Chris Nichols says. He says, Clayton, isn't it management's fault his cap hit is so high because they kicked the can down the road? His annual per year is like 17, right? Let's look at his that's a great question. Let's look real quick at his contract details here, because I know there's voidable years involved, which is what Chris is referring to here. Let me mark my spot so I don't forget. I'm going to drop this down so we can see it. So when you look at Kenny Clark's contract structure, basically the deal he signed was 4 years, $70 million, right? And it was a, let's see, including $25 million signing bonus, $34 million guaranteed. Clark will earn a base salary of $15.5 million while carrying a cap hit of $27.4 million. So what Chris is saying is true. You see the voidable years here in 25 and 26. What we chose to do was we said, all right, let's tack on 2 voidable years and let's spread that signing bonus out, that restructure bonus, because I think they did a restructure. Yeah, you see the restructure there. 2022, 2.7. In 2023, 5.4. 2024, you have 5.4. So they chose to restructure the deal and kick the can down the road. The problem I have with it, and again, this isn't a knock necessarily on Kenny. The problem I have is the money doesn't change. The money you choose to pay a player is the same, right? Like, I mean, it's not going to change just because he had a bad year. It's not going to change just because we put voidable years. It's just simply the cap allocation, right? The bookkeeping, if you will. The reality is they shouldn't have extended him. I mean, I'm just going to ask you guys, do you think he is worth $27.4 million against the cap this year? That's the big question, right? And what Chris is pointing out is, like, in 2023, he was only 12.9 against the cap. That's true. But that you still you tacked on another 13.7 million essentially on the backside is the reason that number was so low. So now ask yourself, is he worth 17 million? Because I have a hard time saying that the 53rd best defensive tackle in the league, production-wise, simply production-wise, not saying he can't, be a top 10 guy this year, is that worth 17 million per? Because the total number hasn't changed. They just decided to push it out like Chris is saying. So it's a fascinating conversation for me, man. It's just truly, it's just it's a rough look. It's a rough look for sure. So let's see. Fred McFarley says, where is Jones from KC on that list? I imagine he's talking about defensive cap hit ranking. That's a great question. He is, I would love to see his cap hit this year, because it is not here in the top 15. I don't have that pulled up. This was just a screen grab I did before the show. If you guys want to look that up and see what Chris Jones's cap hit is, and sometimes these websites do miss a player, he may be the most expensive player, right? But the way Kansas City likes to do things, they like to sign long-term contracts. Patrick Mahomes is a perfect example, and they spread it out. They do even more voidable years. And the issue with that is, let's say they did do voidable years, and it's going to eat up 10, 12, 13 million on the cap for 3 straight years with him not even on the roster because they chose cash over cap with Chris Jones. You're getting the production. You're getting arguably the best defensive tackle in the game. Well, Kenny, we're just not getting that. All right. So the number I would be comfortable with Kenny would be around 10 million. And I may catch some hate for that, and that's totally okay. But based off of how he performed, I mean, if you remove the name, let's do it that way, right? If you remove the name and you said, okay, I got this defensive tackle we're going to sign. He was 27th in pressure percentage, 10th in sacks, 141st in missed tackle percentage, and he was the 35th highest graded PFF defensive tackle. All those key statistics there, rankings, he's 53rd in the league. How much money do you think he's worth? So I'd like to ask the chat that. What do y'all think a player of that caliber, if his name wasn't Kenny Clark, would be worth? It's a premium position. people are paying top dollar for those for the most part. At least it feels like they are. But when you look at this, I mean, obviously we got the largest cap hit we're carrying. I would say 10 million would be the highest I would go personally. Right. So, yeah, it's just like I said, man, it's tough because he is such a loved player. A-Fam's like Clark's disposable. He's like, hey man, look, A-Fam's like Goody, no emotions. I'm over here going, man, Kenny's a great dude. I love Kenny. But let's see, Ron Sample looked it up. Jones, 7.4 million in 2024. There you go, man. There you go. So, yeah, that's a hell of a deal. I don't know if A-Fam's joking or what. He said 25 million. Is that what you're talking about, Clark, or no? All right. So Eric Sutherland says 8.5 million, maybe. Yeah, like I said, I would go 10. Mr. Goat says 8 to 10. There you go. So I think we're all kind of in the same ballpark. I think we all agree 27.4 is just whoo, And like Chris said, it averaged out to 17 per over the duration of the contract because you chose to spread it out a certain way. I'm simply saying after last year, I'd kind of look up and go, okay, how can we get out from under this? Because I can't remember what year the contract restructure took place, but if you could have, see if it gives a date there. In 2024, Clark will earn a base salary. Nope, it doesn't say, does it? Trying to see what year that restructure actually took place. I imagine it had to be in 2022, right? Maybe they did it twice. If they did, you look up in 2022. Did you see him as a top 5 defensive tackle in 2022 before you made that decision? All right. I would probably say no based off what we've seen because his great year was under Mike Pettin, if I remember correctly. That's when he absolutely dominated. So, in that sense, now listen, you've already kind of made your bed. You got to lay in it. Now the question becomes, what do you do with Kenny moving forward? Right? Obviously he's on the roster this year for $27.4 million. They're in contract negotiations right now. You're already on the hook next year. If he isn't on the roster, he's still going to be $13.7 million against the cap next year. So kind of going back to that kicking the can down the road argument, it's like, bro, $13 million, that's twice as much cap hit next year, and he's not even on the roster than Chris Jones is getting, according to Ron Sanville there in 2024. So it's just tough, man. It's a tough look. So now what you got to do is go, okay, $13.7 million against the cap, but if we extend him, what total number are we willing to, allow there? So if the number is 10 million, like I'm saying, we're already over, right? Now, again, in 2026, they get a 5.4 proration there. So if you cut him outright, that accelerates through 2025, and that's why it jumps to 13.7. So I imagine it would be actually a $5.4 million cap hit if you do extend him already. So that means Kenny would have to be willing to take, for it to stay under the number I want, roughly $5 million to play next year. I just don't see him doing that. That's why, unless he takes an extremely low team-friendly deal, I just have a hard time believing Goody's going, yeah, let's do this again. Let's tie up $20 million in cap hit with Kenny Clark. And by the way, he turns 30 next year, and it just defensive line, especially with Kenny. Kenny's been playing for a long time. Right. I mean, that dude, I think he took his first snap at the Packers when he was 20 years old, if I remember correctly. I think they drafted him when he was 19, I believe. So, again, man, if he plays well, yeah, I'd love to have a top 5 defensive tackle, top 10 defensive tackle. The problem is he just hasn't played like that. Now we'll see. Maybe the new system, he just comes out there and absolutely lights it up, But let's see what Coach Lynn said here. Definitely not all Kenny's fault. What he has been asked to do from multiple coordinators with not much around him. I want to see what he would do with this coordinator. I think that's kind of, as we're talking this out, Coach, that's what I came to the realization of. And obviously we're going to see that because he's under contract. Maybe you wait halfway through the year and see if it really clicks, right? And hopefully he doesn't hit that 30-year-old wall too soon. But the other thing that he points out, his best year, he had Mike Daniels next to him, if I remember correctly. So who has he had next to him since then? Now you've got, potentially Devontae White and Carl Brooks, and they're kind of coming into their own. The problem is time's up now. All right, time's up on Kenny. So my guess is they'll probably try to go very team-friendly, and if he's not willing to, go 15 million or less per with, like I said, tacking on that 5.4. So if he's not willing to just take a 10 million per and making that somewhere around 15 million, I can't imagine Goody's going to pay more than that. So going to be interesting for sure. So there is the Kenny Clark situation. I just wanted to kind of point that out and where he ranked. Again, PFF, Sam Monson has him as the 27th best defensive tackle. Obviously, he was 27th in pressure percentage, 10th in sacks, 141st in broken tackles, and again, 35th highest graded defensive tackle according to PFF. So Sam Monson's actually saying, hey, he's better than what we graded him, you know? So they are showing him a little more love than probably I am, to be honest with you. So kind of interesting, though. All right, let's move on to the cornerback position. All right, and this is obviously we're going to see if the Packers had a cornerback make this list. All right, so once again, PFF cornerback rankings, top 32 ahead of the 2024 NFL season. This one is written by Josh Costco. Costco, yeah, I think I'm saying that right. Not like the store, but SK, not T, whatever. You guys get it. TSCO. But John Costco wrote this on June the 3rd, okay? Let's look at the top corners across the league. All right. Number 1, Sauce Gardner from the Jets. And again, we like to make fun of Joe Douglas, but Sauce Gardner's a dog. And I get it, higher hit rate when you're always drafted in the top 3 or top 5, right? But nonetheless, he did hit on that pick. He also hit on Garrett Wilson same year, I think, if I remember correctly. Number 2, you got Trent McDuffie from the Kansas City Chiefs. Once again, Chris Jones, number 1 defensive lineman, interior defensive lineman, according to Sam Monson. And now you've got his teammate there in the secondary, Trent McDuffie, playing corner for Kansas City as the number 2 corner in the league. Number 3, Charvarius Ward for the San Francisco 49ers. Number 4, Patrick Surtain for the Denver Broncos. Number 5, Jalen Johnson for the Chicago Bears. Number 6, Jalen Ramsey for the Miami Dolphins. And then we've got number 7, Jaire Alexander for the Green Bay Packers. The write-up says, the Packers star is another injury-riddled player who takes a hit on the rankings. Alexander earned a 91.9 grade from 2020 to 2022, the league's best mark over that span. He needs to show he can stay healthy in 2024, and he's now missed large portions of 2 of the last 3 seasons. So obviously they're kind of chalking this up like he could be the best corner in the game if he can stay healthy, right? So let's jump over to the high salary cap hits amongst cornerbacks. Number 1 in the league, Jaire Alexander at 23.9, right? Now, I don't have a deep dive on statistics on Jaire Alexander. I think we would all agree last year was another down year for Jaire, considering how well he played, like they said, peaking 2020 through 2022, where he was in the 90s in PFF grade. But still the highest paid corner. So you want to know where our salary cap's going. We just found it, right? It's going to Kenny Clark, who's underperformed, and it's going to Jaire Alexander, who the team had to suspend last year, and I think we would all agree underperformed last year. Doesn't mean he's a bad corner. I'm just simply saying that he didn't play $23.9 million worth last year, right? So that's where he lands on that. Now, some people are going, wow, that's ugly. How do we get that fixed? What does it take to fix that? Here are the details of Jaire Alexander's contract. So in 2024, his cap hit is 23.9. In 2025, it jumps to 25.8. So not a huge jump, just a little over $1 million, right? Now, what you want to start keying in on his contract, because he's under contract through 2026, and he's got one voidable year in 2027. So they've already got kind of the skeleton in place to kick money out if need be. I'm not saying they should or they need to, but his salary cap jumping to 25.8 in 2025. The dead cap attached is $19 million. And this is why last year when people were saying we need to cut him, we need to trade him because of the issue he had in the locker room, the only way that would have made sense is if you got hella good draft compensation back, because the reality was last year the dead cap was 35.4 and the cap hit was only 23.9. So essentially you were taking an $11 million cap hit to dead cap hit. I'm sorry, you were losing $11 million in cap space on top of what you already had designated for him to be on the roster. You're going to lose the player and lose another $11 million in cap space because of the dead cap hit of 35.4. So now you're getting into the part of the contract, and this is where some people are saying maybe Jaire is going to straighten up because this is where the guaranteed money starts to go down on the backside of the contract. You could cut him outright in 2025, and you free up about $6 million, a little less than $6 million. in 2026, let's say you hold on to him through 2025, and then 2026 he turns 29 years old, and his play just completely declines. His dead cap's only 10.7 million, and his cap hit was 17.8. So you could cut him and free up $17 million in cap space that year. And of course, that's because the 2027 voidable year of 2.3 million will accelerate to the year that you cut him. Because again, that's guaranteed money. Just because you void the years and kick the can down the road doesn't mean you get out paying that money. It simply means when you do get him off your roster, it accelerates to the current year. And to the best of my knowledge, you can't spread that out. There might be some June 1st designation that could take place there, but for the most part, that's just the bill that's due. So again, Jaire Alexander, the largest cap hit amongst cornerbacks in the National Football League. And then again, in his contract, he's definitely under contract this year. Next year, you could potentially get out. 2026, you could start to get out as well, and free up $17 million in cap space. I'm not saying we should. I hope he comes out and balls out. I hope him and Kenny Clark both do. Hope that Jeff Hafley hiring just rejuvenates their career. That would be absolutely awesome. But here you're seeing that's the other thing too. Like when people say, "Man, we've given these defensive coordinators all this talent to work with, and they can't get it done." And we've been saying it for 3 coordinators now. When we ran Dom Capers out of town, that was the talk. When Mike Pettin got ran out of town, it was the same type of thing. Like, look at the players we've signed. We keep spending draft capital on first-round picks on the defensive side of the ball, and they're not playing well. We just blame the coordinator. We blame the coordinator. Well, we've blamed 3 coordinators in a row now, right? And I know this goes, long before Jaire Alexander was here. It's just a thing that's gone on in Green Bay for quite some time with the coordinators. But it can't be Dom Capers, Mike Pettin, and Joe Barry's fault. Sooner or later, you got to kind of look up and go, okay, maybe a couple of these guys aren't as good as we thought they were, or they aren't as good as we're paying them. Could be. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'm just a dumb redneck Packer fan talking ball. But that's the first thing that comes to mind for me. It's like, okay, we are overpaid. We have overpaid for Jaire Alexander and Kenny Clark as it sits right now. So that's what makes me think let Kenny test the market next year. Try to get that team-friendly deal, that extension this offseason, before training camp concludes. And if you can get it, great. If not, then, hey, look, here's what we got to do, man. Go test the market, and just plan on losing. That's the only thing I can kind of come up with. But let's see here. M. Smitty in the chat said Ja was his own worst enemy last year. I completely agree. Completely agree with that. And I think he realized that, for as much frustration as I had, and I'm sure many other Packer fans had, with one of, if not the highest paid cornerbacks in the league acting the way he acted, I've also got to tip my cap to him because he could have played pissy after the suspension, but he came back and owned it and said, hey, we all learned from it. And he seemed to kind of own it. Man, I can respect that. I do stupid stuff all the time. You kidding me? I say it all the time, man. You think I don't do stupid stuff? Ask my wife. She sees it on the daily. So I make mistakes every single day. I hope that attitude's straightened out. I really do, man. So let's see here. Yeah, like Ron said, both on and off the field. Let's see what else we got. Chris Nichols says, if 23 plays like he has the last 2 years, I'd like to see the Packers move on from Jaire after this season, whether that be trade or something else. And that's the thing, too. If you do decide to trade him after this year, to the best of my knowledge, the cap hit's going to stay the same, right? It's the same penalty involved as included as if you were cutting him outright. And there might be a few details that you can finagle there with them taking some of the cap. But for the most part, it's pretty set in stone. Yeah, that would be the way to go. I guarantee you somebody would trade for him. Somebody would be willing to give up like a 3rd-round pick for him. Now, do I want to give up Jaire Alexander for a 3rd-round pick? Not if he's willing to take a pay cut at some point, if his play continues to decline. Now, if he comes out this year and he returns to that 2020 through 2022 form, and he's arguably the best corner in the game, shoot, I'm okay with paying that money, guys. There's nothing wrong with overpaying for great, but these teams get themselves in trouble overpaying for good, right? That's the tough part. So, yeah, let's see here. Ron Sample said attitude alone can make the top guys again. Let's see. Smitty says Clayton is not bringing in the right players. Clayton is not bringing in the right players who fit what the D coordinator is wanting to run, ? He's asking me, are they not bringing it? It kind of feels like that. And I don't think it's like this no, this guy's a better fit for that scheme, and we went the different route. I think it's more along the lines of in the first round, which is when these guys have been taken, your Eric Stokes, your Kenny Clarks, your Jaire Alexanders, these guys that have been studs at outside of Eric Stokes, obviously. He had 1 year where he graded out in the 60s, played pretty decent, but hasn't done anything since and has been hurt. I'll give him that. But I don't think it's so much that it's not matching the scheme. I think that in the first round, the Packers, for the longest time, for as long as I've been a Packer fan, they really, really, really value that athletic ability. They're willing to go, you know what, don't forget, but let's don't focus so much on the tape as we do. This dude is a world-class athlete, and he's got just unlimited potential, right? And I think there's too much emphasis on that, you know? It's the difference between taking someone like that and someone like Brian Branch, right? Brian Branch is just a scrappy football player. You guys remember we talked about Kyle Hamilton. I was very, very vocal. That was my first year on the Packernet Podcast Network. I was very vocal about Kyle Hamilton, and many people rolling their eyes probably thinking, well, he's just a Notre Dame fan. That's why he's so excited about him. No, this dude is rangy. He's long. He can play post safety. He can come down and lay the thunder. This dude is just a well-rounded, great safety. He graded out, I think, as my second best prospect that year. Now, he didn't fall as far to the Packers, so it's not like I'm sitting there saying the Packers should have took him. I'm simply saying if you've got a guy that's quote unquote, it could be potentially a generational talent, he is the second best player on the draft board, and they get within striking range, be willing to pull the trigger, climb up and get that guy, right? And if you guys remember, he ran that wonky 40. He ran the 40-yard dash sideways. He's like veering off, and everybody's like, oh, this guy. Kidding me? Did you see his 40-yard dash? And I'm going, have you seen his tape? This dude is a stud. Now he's arguably the best safety in the game with the Baltimore Ravens. They took him. Baltimore knows what's up. They can, because they don't necessarily go, all right, who's the fastest? Who's the most athletic? Who can jump the highest? They're looking at, yes, they take all that into consideration, but they're also looking at the tape going, this dude's a damn football player. So that's what it feels like to me, Smitty. It's like we're so focused on getting those world-class athletes as opposed to stepping back and going, okay, out of the group of world-class athletes, which one really looks like the better football player? Okay, here's the better football player, but this guy's got a higher ceiling because of his athletic ability and his natural traits. Let's go with that. I'm saying let's play it a little safer and lean towards the other guy. Let me give you another example. Creed Humphrey, right? And I know we talked about this earlier this morning when we were breaking down the center position. But why did we take Josh Myers over Creed Humphrey? And think about it. I guarantee you it's all the things that me and Jacob talked about, the upside. That dude is massive. He's like 6'5", over 300 pounds as a center. And he's got the athletic traits and ability to play duo, to play double-double, get to the second level. He can pull as a center, right? But if you're bad at doing it, you can get there. But how many times have we see him get in space the last 3 years, and he just looked like he was kind of lost out there and couldn't block? Now, you look at Creed Humphrey, probably less of an athlete, and I don't know his measurables. I'm sure it's somewhat comparable. But it came down to those two centers, and Goody said Josh Myers is our guy. Why did he think Josh Myers is the guy over Creed Humphrey? I think it's because of the athletic upside. You know, that's just me personally, and I could be completely wrong there. So there you go. Eric Sutherland, good old RAS. And again, Goody probably isn't looking at RAS, but he's looking at his own athletic score, right, Eric? And that's what we're kind of talking about. Going, man, that dude, wow, he can really move. Get you in trouble sometimes. It really can, man. M. Smitty said, if you bring in high-end athletic talent with lesser football technique, then it becomes a twofold issue of coaching that player up as well as the player needing to put in the work to learn. Exactly. If it's somebody who is just a student of the game and they live at the facility, Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, their rookie year, you heard Matt LaFleur talking about walking out of the room to go home, and it was late. I mean, really late one night. All the coaches were heading home, and Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft were in the cafeteria studying the playbook together. If you get those kind of guys, and they had high RASs, right? So it's not necessarily like the high RAS is a bad thing, but like Smitty's saying here, man, you got to find the guys that want to put in the work, right? The scrappers. So looks like Eric. Yeah, Eric agrees. Smitty, exactly. So, again, let's see here. Ron Samuel says, was there something that Creed Humphrey did that didn't fit the Packers? I don't know the answer to that question right offhand, Ron. I'd like to know what their RAS comparisons are, though. If anybody can pull it up, while I go on to the safety position. We'll come back to that. Hopefully I'll see it here in the chat. Just you guys don't let me forget about it. I'd like to know, Smitty, if you could look it up. I would look it up, but we'd be sitting here with dead air for 6 minutes. See if we can find Creed Humphrey's RAS and see if we can find Josh Myers. Creed Humphrey might have a higher RAS than Josh Myers, and that would completely debunk everything we just talked about. It just feels like to me, Josh Myers' size is what really kind of made Goody want him over Creed Humphrey, if that makes sense. So, all right, let's do this. Let's go ahead and move on to the safety position. This will be the last position of this little series that we've done. I've really enjoyed this, though, man. I just love getting other people's opinions. I talk so damn much. I get tired of I want to hear someone else. I want to see someone else's opinion or read someone else's opinion. Let's see here. Yeah, so we'll wait on that RAS. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat there. Hopefully I don't overlook it before we wrap up. But here we are. PFF safety rankings, top 32 ahead of the 2024 NFL season. Oh, there you go. Dang. So Ron Sample said Humphrey 10 RAS. Is that as a center? Ron, now I'm working y'all to death. I'm sorry. Because you got to be careful. Some people will throw one up and it's like, here he is as a guard. Here he is as a center. I imagine that's as a center. So he had a higher RAS than Josh Myers. What is Creed Humphrey's size? Because it usually shows you on the RAS. That was the big thing I wanted to see because that would be the big difference. Creed Humphrey. Let's go height, weight real quick. Give me just a second. Because it might have been the measurable. Okay, so Creed Humphrey, 6'4", 302. All right, let me write that down. 6'4", 302. 302. Now let's see Josh Myers, what his measurables are. Height, weight. Josh Myers, 6'5", 310. Maybe that's what it was, right? Maybe there was more reach, a little bit better size, but 6'5", 310, maybe that's what turned him on. And maybe they seen the tape and liked him better. Maybe he interviewed better, right? Maybe that was the case too. So, yeah, interesting though. Wow. Man, it's just somebody help me. Why the heck did we pass up on Creed Humphrey? There had to be something, right? There's something that if Goody was listening to the show, and God knows he isn't, he doesn't want this brain damage. I bet there's something that was like we couldn't took him. We had to take Josh over him because of this, right? Maybe it was something medical. Who knows, right? That we didn't even hear. But nonetheless, safety position, top 32 ahead of the 2024 NFL season with the safety rankings. All right, number 1 in the league, Antoine Winfield Jr. Obviously, he was set to be a free agent this year. I think they re-signed him to a big deal. Number 2, Kyle Hamilton, who we were just talking about, right? Oh, looky here. Coach Lynn may have it. Creed Humphrey was a lefty. Does that matter, Coach? That of all the years I've watched football, I have never paid attention to were there any centers that were left-handed. I wonder if that mattered. That maybe they had a similar grade on both of them. They said, all right, what's the tiebreaker? What's the cluster buster here? Well, he's a lefty. All right, yeah, let's go with the righty. That could have been it, right? All right, they were worried about hocking with Rodgers. That could have been the case, right? Could have been the case. But it sure has worked out in Kansas City, right? As Coach Lynn says, it matters. So there you go, man. Maybe that's what it was. I think we might have found it, fellas. I think we might have found it. Good job, Coach. Appreciate you, man. All right, so number 2, safety, Kyle Hamilton for the Baltimore Ravens. Number 3, Jesse Bates for the Falcons. He was the big free agent acquisition, I think, the year before, if I remember correctly, right? Number 4, Minkah Fitzpatrick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I remember when everybody made fun of the Steelers for trading, was it a first or a second round pick? I think it was a first round pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick. He was with the Miami Dolphins. Many people don't know that. Steelers went out and traded for him and got him. He's been a dog. I mean, he's been one of the few, shining lights on that Pittsburgh team for sure. Number 5, Marcus Williams of the Baltimore Ravens. So they've got 2 safeties. This just isn't fair. Kyle Hamilton of the Baltimore Ravens, and then you go down and you've got Marcus Williams from the Baltimore Ravens. That's just wild. Next is Javon Holland from the Miami Dolphins. Number 7 is Derwin James for the Chargers. And then number 8 is our very own Xavier McKinney. It says McKinney had a breakout 2023 season, recording a career-high 87.5 PFF overall grade that ranked 4th amongst safeties, and it came in a contract year. He subsequently cashed in with the Packers on a 4-year, $67 million deal. The former New York Giant played a full season for just the second time in his 4 years in the NFL and he made the most of it, ranking first among safeties in PFF coverage grade at a 91.2. McKinney allowed a 52.3 passer rating in coverage, tied for the fourth lowest mark at that position, and he was the most targeted safety to not allow a touchdown all season. So he didn't allow a tutter all year long, and he got targeted more than any other safety that got targeted that much. That's a pretty wild statistic there. So obviously Xavier McKinney, big pickup there, right? Big pickup. So we will we'll see how that shakes out this year. I think he's going to be a stud. I love everything he represents. You hear he's already having an influence on Jaire Alexander. Maybe that straightens that whole situation out. But when we look at the contract, safety cap hit ranking, number 1, Minkah Fitzpatrick. And again, on this list, I'll try to run these down as we do this in real time. Minkah Fitzpatrick was number 4 on this list. He's at the highest cap hit amongst safeties in the league at $21.3 million. Number 2, Derwin James. Derwin James falls number 7 on the PFF list, but he is the second highest cap hit at 19.8. Number 3, Budda Baker. Don't know where he's at on the list. Number 4, Marcus Williams. Marcus Williams, like we pointed out, was number 5 on the PFF list. His cap hit puts him in the number 4 spot at $18.7 million across the league. 5th highest cap hit at $17.5 million is Jesse Bates. And Jesse Bates, according to PFF, this article, they have him as the 3rd best safety. So right there about where he needs to be. Number 6, Justin Reed at $14.2 million. Don't see him on the list here anywhere, at least toward the top. Number 7, you've got Jalen Thompson. Number 8, you've got Amani Hooker. Number 9, you got Julian Love. Number 10, you got Antoine Winfield Jr. This is cap hits. And then number 11 in cap hit, Xavier McKinney for the Packers at only $7.8 million. So he is the 11th highest cap hit at the safety position. And on this list here, they have him as the 8th best safety in the league. So you see how we're kind of connecting cap hit and cap hit percentage to where their ranking may potentially be. And that's how you come up with your best return on investment, if you will. So Xavier McKinney, man, you just absolutely love that contract. And if we kind of glance ahead here and just take a quick peek at his contract, obviously it's the first year of his deal. It's only $7.8 million. Now it's going to jump to $17.6 million next year. So if we go back to that rating here, 17.6 would put him as the fifth most expensive cap hit. So still right there in the ballpark. Again, he graded out as the 8th, according to PFF, the 8th in this article, best safety in the league. And his cap hits at 11. Then he jumps to 5th next year. Now, here's the thing. These guys' cap hits are going to go up too. So he'll probably be around the same spot. I didn't sort it out by year, obviously. So, just really like the way that contract lays out. Then he jumps to $19.1 million. But here's what you want to key in on. In 2026, when he jumps to $19.1 million, look at the dead cap attached, only $11.5 million. So you could cut him, not that you would, but you would free up roughly, $7.5 million against the cap. If for some reason it doesn't pan out, you can free up cap space and get out from under that contract. Now, let's say you keep him through 2026, you get to 2027, you say, okay, now's the time to cut bait. His cap hit is $22.5 million, which is 7% of the cap, but his dead cap is only $5.7 million. So you're going to free up $17 million in cap hit, roughly $16 million in cap hit if you cut him after the 2026 season. So you can get out of that contract. And this is what we're going to keep talking about, these things, because we've talked about them in the past, and I want to make sure that we're all kind of learning together, and we kind of realize that when we say someone signs a 4-year deal, it's really just a 3-year deal. When someone signs a 3-year deal, it's really just a 2-year deal. Now, there are some people that will structure the contract in a way that it'll kind of make them a little more secure on the backside, but that's not how the Packers do business. And that's why they're able to get out of contracts if they need to. But again, the big problem I think that we were faced with, and it's not a huge problem, we're a playoff team and we're the youngest team in the league. So please don't take this as, man, Clayton really down on the Packers. That is not the case at all, man. I'm just simply pointing out that when you look at the cap hit and the return on investment, at least in over the last year or two, kind of feels like Kenny Clark and Jaire Alexander are overpaid. I'm just going to scroll down real quick before we wrap up and make sure they didn't include any other safeties here. I can't imagine they did, but if they've got Bullard on this list, that would be really exciting too. And they do not. So that's the only safety they had. So there you go, man. That's how it lines up. Again, just wanted to kind of walk through the rest of those positions real quick and kind of show, okay, here's where the PFF team have each of these guys ranked at their respective positions, and here's how their cap hit looks. So just wanted to kind of take a glance at that, finish up that little series. That was a lot of fun. So we'll hop into some really cool talk tomorrow. We got a little bit of franchise value talk and talk about what teams were sold for and purchased for here over the history of the game. We've basically got the team that was paid the least amount for. I'll give you a little spoiler alert. It was actually the Packers. And then the most recent team that sold, which was the Commanders, and exactly where the value lies in those franchises. I think that'll be a good conversation. We're also going to talk about the 5 greatest dynasties in NFL history, one of which was actually the Packers. So that's pretty cool when your team makes a top 5 list of dynasties of all time. We'll hit on that tomorrow morning as well. And I'll make a note to hit on those 2 things when we get cranked up in the morning. So we will be back tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Eastern. There won't be a show tomorrow night, so you guys can just kind of watch the morning live show later in the day if you want to. But unfortunately, we got the funeral and everything planned tomorrow for my brother. And I just want to thank everyone for, prayers, thoughts, all that. Really appreciate y'all reaching out. Tough time for our family for sure. But I'm going to spend a lot of time with my sisters tomorrow. I'm really excited about that. We don't get enough time together, that's for sure. So I'm the youngest of the siblings. I've got, my brother was the oldest, and then I've got 3 sisters that are older than me, and I'm the baby of the family, and get to hang out with my sisters tomorrow and a little bit on Monday too. But we'll bring you a morning show tomorrow, and then we'll be back to an evening show on Monday. Shouldn't be any problem. But thank you all again for the well wishes and everything. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us. Everybody in the chat, thank you all so much for taking the time to hang out with us. I really, really appreciate it. For those of you on the pod, can't say this enough. Thank you all for making us a part of your day. You guys are kind of the lifeblood of what we do. The podcast is a great resource to help, the advertising and everything that goes into the podcast. You guys sitting through those ads, we don't take it lightly. It's the reason that we're able to buy the equipment we need and keep this thing going and try to up the production value. Although YouTube has kind of hindered us a little bit on some of the fun stuff we were doing, but we're going to get through it, and we'll continue to try to get creative and make the show as good as possible. But thank you all so much. As always, let's go out and be the change we want to see in the world. We'll see you guys and gals in the morning, 8 a.m. Central. Go Pack, go.